and she goes on point. And it's beautiful. I mean, she kind of had like the hard stop, paws up. She's real intense. So I am hightailing it. I'm like, she's got a bird. This is it. We're gonna do it. And that's when I saw the snake. And so Tim's like, we'll just put her in my vest. And I'm like, this is my dog. I am carrying her out of this field. And so I did. We put her in my vest, clipped her in. And when I went to put her in the truck, I had blood on my arm. And so I was like, she's been bit. Like, we got to go.
So I'm looking at this going, oh man.
What have we done?
They say don't do all the things that we just did.
Yep.
And he is quite confident, yep, I do this all the time and your dog's gonna be fine.
We get a call a little after 8. So she's only been there for like 6 hours. And the vet says, she's not doing good. And I am afraid that with the amount of swelling that she has, I don't think she's going to make it. And I mean, it just, when you hear that about your dog and you start second guessing every decision you've made in this moment, should we have pushed to get the Antivenom somewhere else? Should we have gone to Rapid City? Should we have taken her out of, the Sioux Falls and taken her somewhere else when we weren't getting treatment? The year before, we had taken our first gun dog to South Dakota, and I think about like day 2, I was like, I need my own dog. I was so excited. And so, luck would have it that there was a pup available. And from day 1, we got her, I think in March. And we started, doing some normal training, obedience stuff, but everything was sort of gearing up to be ready to go to South Dakota in September or October. And so we, the planner over here, he started mapping out where we would go. We had met some friends the year before, or some new people through the dog community. And so we started talking to them about, what days worked for them and where we would go. And we wanted to add some duck hunting and as well. So, it just kind of became this big 6-week long adventure that we were planning. And, we wanted to do some training with our pup. Her name's Puna. And so the week before we actually left, she took her NA test. She got a prize 112. We were super, super excited. So we knew she was ready, and we were super excited to just get her out in the field and start doing some work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Puna is your first dog.
Yeah.
Tim had his Griffon, Lily. You wanted essentially to replicate that and have that for yourself. So you got this dog anticipating and looking forward to this trip. And so when it starts coming down to it, talk to me about the actual preparation, because we hear all the time about the horror stories that can come out west. We're all excited. We want to go shoot birds, but there's also certain things that we need to be prepared for as owners and handlers. So kind of walk me through you gathering that up and planning that as a first-time dog owner, essentially.
Yeah. So, Lily was a great example. We had gone out there the year before with a lot of expectations. We thought, this is going to be great. We're going to, hit our limit every single day. And, that was not the case. So I think we went into this particular trip with very just mild expectations, really just wanting to go out there and watch the dogs work. And so I think, when we worked on training and we worked on, getting them ready, it was, just understanding, what you're looking for and just being excited to be out there in the field and watch her learn, and so I think that's one of the cool things about Lily is that, over a 10-day period, we got to watch her go through the process of busting through a covey all the way to holding a point for, 90 seconds on the last day while we were trying to catch up to her. So we had really low expectations, really just wanted to go out there and watch the dogs work and just have a blast. So, in doing that, we had learned a lot the year before. And so Tim spent a lot of time, coming up with first aid kits and things that we would carry on our out in the field with us. We had all the normal gear. And yeah, I mean, it was just, we felt prepared, but it was just something that we just wanted to go out and have some fun and watch the dogs work.
Yeah, I went back to the episodes that you did with Mark Holcott and went through the whole thing, taking notes, and then I don't remember if it must have been you posted something. I've either reposted it from him or you created a post or whatever. But it was like his list of things that should be in your first aid kit. So I took that and took the list or took the notes that I had taken during the thing and looked at some other things too, and kind of like put together like what if I could have everything that I could possibly need in the first aid kit. What's the ultimate first aid kit look like? Like clearly beyond my capability, but like if I could put it in there, would it go? And I will caveat that with Sam actually has a medical background, so like I was like, the stuff is there. She'll figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
And then all the stuff that people talk about if you're going to be prepared, the things you should do, like know where the nearest emergency vet is, like know where the nearest emergency animal hospital is, that kind of stuff. So I had my list of all those things, and I felt like we were from that perspective like really ready. Um, the first time when we went out there with Lily, I felt like we were ready, but then this year even more ready, right? Because we went back to the same area, so like we kind of had the lay of the land and had all that stuff again. Now it's more like going through, just checking the inventory, making sure the stuff is still good and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think I'm pretty type A. Like I retired from the Navy, like on submarines. Like I mean, I was like I had all the stuff, like
You know how to use a checklist.
right. I can make a checklist. Let me tell you.
But so, I mean, that's important to note that you did the due diligence. You felt comfortable, especially if it was outside of your skill level. Your wife, Sam, it's within her purview. You're familiar with the area. You have the vets. It's just like you think going in. It's just like, all right, I've done all of the preparation for the what ifs, the scenarios that we hope never comes to light. Now it's time to just go out there and have fun, right? So it's just like, okay, I've done everything that's advisable to do. Now let's just, that box is checked. Now let's focus on hunting. And so let's start there. You knock out the NA test with Puna on the way there. You get to the trip. Talk to me about how the trip starts, how it's going, the successes, failures, whatever.
Yeah. It was awesome just to watch her get out there and we put them on the field or out on the field one at a time, just letting Puna just run out there, figure out what she's looking for. I think the first couple of days she found more field mice than she found birds, but
Typical for a puppy.
Yeah, she's pointing them. She brought, I mean, the super soft mouth, like the amount of mice that like ran away from her after she spit them out. It was great. I was like, okay, that's one checkbox.
Part of that was on us. I feel like we had some bad luck with like, okay, this is the field we want to hunt Puna in. It's like, well, there's no birds in this field.
Yeah.
That's how it always goes with young dogs. It's like, I came here for this dog and the veterans are cleaning up.
Right.
But this is par for the course.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. But it was great. I mean, the first time that she pointed a bird, it was, she held it for quite some time. Like I was actually pretty impressed. And then we get close and she jumps it and whatnot. But for the most part, it was exactly what you would expect for a young puppy. She's figuring out the wind. She's figuring out the terrain that she wanted to be in, what terrain that the birds were going to be in. And just to watch her kind of work the wind was really, really impressive because, you try to set them up for success. And so you're looking at the wind dropping in the field, so that you're walking diagonal so you can, whatever, walk diagonal back and forth. But, if we ended up downwind, she would go way out ahead of us and then kind of work her way back. And it was you could just see the wheels spinning for her. And I think, we did get a couple of birds for her. We started with duck hunting. And so she got to retrieve her first duck and it was wounded. So it was still kind of, flapping around and she made it through all the decoys. It was kind of confusing for her, but, she gets up there, grabs it by the wing and pulls it all the way back in. And I mean, it was just such a cool moment, to watch her figure that out. And then, we did some grouse hunting, or prairie chicken, I think was the first one she ended up getting. Pointed it, it flushed a little bit in front of her. I don't think we were quite up there, but yeah, we managed to get it, and she went and got it, and it was big, and she was only what, 9 months, 10 months?
9 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
10 months. Yeah, 10 months.
Yeah. So
y'all are seeing the light bulbs come on. Y'all are,
yeah.
that's the fun part about the puppy season is just watching the light bulbs come on. It's definitely not the most, I don't know, efficient hunting, let's say, but it's exposing, and it's watching them learn and figure things out. It never gets old to watch a puppy just start piecing it together. It's especially when they start slamming points on wild birds. It's like, I swear they're looking at you like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing it.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. And and it was really cool to learn her too, because every dog is different, and so we were so used to seeing what Lily would do in the field, and if there was a bird there, and she would get birdie, and then she would have like a real serious point, and you knew what was in front of her. But to figure that out for Puna, she has a different intensity, she has a different turn, she has a different way she shows that she's birdie and stuff, and then figuring out if it was a mouse or a bird, that's also something to work on. But yeah, it was just really cool to work with her, and and there's nothing better than a dog just like looking back, checking in with you, and then continuing on their business. It was exactly what I had hoped for when I said a year earlier that I wanted my own dog. So it was awesome.
So you're out there, it's come to light, it's come to fruition. What you're out there a year prior, I want my own dog. Fast forward, here we are, it's happening. The light bulbs are going off. You're finding successes. You're seeing the wheels turn and everything. Let's go ahead and fast forward to the day that, because if I remember correctly, this was the last day in this area.
Yeah. So I think it doesn't entirely matter to the story, except that it may help make sense of some of the decisions we made. So Sam had to come back for work. So this was a Friday. The last day was a Friday, and she was flying out on Saturday out of Sioux Falls to come back here to Tennessee. And so everything was built around, we need to get back towards Sioux Falls so she can fly home, and then I was going to go to Minnesota, and she was going to fly up to Minnesota a few weeks later and meet me there. Yeah, so that was like, it was the last day we were going to be hunting in like the central South Dakota area. So,
So y'all are going out hunting. Y'all know that it's like, all right, well, it's time's clicking here, time is ticking here in South Dakota. Y'all are going on a last walk. You tell the story. What happened that whole day that you can remember? Just kind of go into as much detail as you can recall.
Yeah. It was so it was really cold that morning and super windy. And we had some success in a field a few days earlier. So we decided, last day, let's go back out there. We'll put Puna out first, then we'll put Lily out. We're kind of alternating days there. And so we were kind of making this big loop on Puna's first walk, and we were up on a ridge, and we were kind of looking down into this valley, and you could see Puna get a little birdie, I guess is what we were coming to look at it as, and and you can see her kind of quartering back and forth, and I'm like, I think she's on something, but she's chasing it, and so she's working this bird for like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 minutes. And then she finally goes on point, and then she'll readjust, and then she goes on point. And it was like the perfect dog work. I mean, it was perfect. You could see that she was trying to get in front of the bird, stop it from running. And then she would come around and she'd point, and, we're kind of staying right behind her. And it was really unfortunate because by the time when we got up there, the bird, when it got up, finally, it went up and then down into the next valley. And so it was right behind her. We couldn't even get off a shot, but it was like perfect bird work. And it was just such the culmination of everything that she'd been learning over the last few days. And to be able to see that, it was just phenomenal. And so unfortunately, we didn't get a bird that morning for her. And so I was a little bummed. I really wanted to shoot over her.
But she earned it.
Yeah.
I mean, she earned it that morning.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that bird was awesome. yeah, we get back to the truck and we just, we're gonna go work Lily. So we go to a different field. I think we actually get a couple birds there for Lily. And and then we get back to the truck trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, I want to get Puna out in the field again. And so we decided that we were going to go to this other field that we had some success again in, and we were going to put him out at the same time. And so that was it.
Is this the first time y'all have run them together?
We did once or twice before.
Okay.
Yeah. And
not that it really matters, but just out
Yeah.
of curiosity.
Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, we'll do it together. So we get one more walk out of them. And then it was going to be short because we needed to pack up. So we had the camper and we were going to move back to Sioux Falls so she could fly home. And then it was also that day, like this year was unseasonably warm,
Right.
pretty late in the season. But that day was only like 55 and overcast, so even at noon. So it was like, all right, we can go do one more walk, right? So
Yep. So we put in and we kind of talked about we were only gonna do like 15 minutes because Puna had done, I don't know, like 8 miles that morning. We had walked to, the puppy thing.
for a 9-month-old Griff, 9 miles on their first hunting trip, that can be a
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a lot. So we kind of set our time. We're going to do, 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back, and that was going to be it. And so we're walking. We come up on a couple of birds, but they kind of flush too far away from us. And we get to this ridge, and I think I'm just kind of feeling a little like, yeah, this isn't really going to work. I'm just starting to feel a little bit down on myself of like, let's just turn around and go back to the truck. And so we're standing on the top of a ridge, and I just look out and I'm like, why don't we let Lily go clear the other side, and then we're going to call it and go back. And then Puna kind of follows, but not to the extent where Lily's going because Puna's kind of tired. And she gets down to the bottom, like in between the two valleys, and she goes on point. And it's beautiful. I mean, she kind of had like the hard stop, paws up. She's real intense. And so I am hightailing it. I'm like, she's got a bird. This is it. We're gonna do it. And so I get down there, and I'm probably still, I don't know, about 20 feet from her. And that's when I saw the snake. And so she's still on point. And I remember just yelling like, no, 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 like trying to just make a noise so that she realizes like, this isn't right. Like something's wrong. And so like, I'm getting chills already thinking about it. And I don't actually remember ever seeing the snake move. You saw Puna move though, right?
So I am like 20 yards back, and I'm just letting Sam go in to do this, and all I saw was Puna jump up in the air, and I hear Sam yell no, and then after that I hear the rattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think in that moment, one, as a human, don't go towards the snake. I was carrying a gun, so that would have been thought number one. But in that moment, I just wanted to get in between, the snake and Puna. Better thoughts prevailed, but what I loved in that moment, so she wouldn't put weight on her leg almost immediately. And I didn't know she had been, bit, struck by the snake or anything at this point. And I just said, Puna here. And she immediately on 3 legs hopped over to me. And I was like, man, I'm so thankful we spent some time on her recall, because even in this environment, she's hurt. She doesn't know what's going on. She looked for me, she listened, and she came back to me. And I was like, that was awesome, because the last thing I wanted her to do was jump on the snake and try to fight it, And so, yeah, she came to me, and apparently, I would find out probably 6 months later, I took off my gloves and laid them down somewhere in the field. They're still there. And
if anybody comes across
if anyone does,
look out for the snake.
Right. Exactly. That's where we saw it. Yeah. So I took off my gloves and I'm trying to like feel on her, like what happened. Like, I don't know if I never saw the snake move, nor did I see her. So I don't know where I went in that moment, but, so I'm feeling on her. I'm trying to figure out, like, is she bleeding? Is she hurt? What's going on? And, she's starting to bite at me a little bit. She doesn't want me touching her shoulder. She's kind of whining at this point, and she wouldn't put weight on it. And oddly enough, so Tim had gotten, what are our vests that we have?
The Final Rise, yeah.
Final Rise vest. And I had seen on Instagram right before we left that on that vest they put like what are those clasps called? The little.
They have the buckles that come undone so you can carry the dog out.
Yeah.
But what she had seen was someone used a carabiner, like one of the S-biners, to, when they carried the dog, clip the collar of the dog to the vest so they can't wiggle out.
I got you.
That was what she had seen, yeah.
And so he had gotten some before we had left. And so that was on the back of on our vest. And so we realized we were a pretty good ways away from the truck. So we needed to get moving. Even though we hadn't confirmed yet she had been bit. And so Tim's like, we'll just put her in my vest. And I'm like, this is my dog. I am carrying her out of this field. And so I did. We put her in my vest, clipped her in. Probably should have played with it a little bit before we had left, because in that moment you're just trying to move quick.
Yeah.
And so it was a little difficult to get her back to the truck. But I mean, it worked like a charm. It was perfect. Going through the fences and of course on the way back, a grouse gets up right in front of us. A jackrabbit goes off to the right, and
Yeah.
so he's trying to get Lily to come back because she's chasing the jackrabbit.
Good for Lily.
Right? She's like, why aren't you shooting?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not done
I
yet.
didn't get bit.
Yeah.
So at this time, you called the vet on the way to the truck, right?
Yep. So on the way back to the truck, I called the emergency vet, made sure that they, one, I was like, hey, we have a dog that got bit by a snake. I was just going to confirm that you are equipped to handle it, and then, let you know that I'm on my way. And they said, yep, no problem. Just let us know when to get here. And so we hightailed it over there. So we had Puna to the vet in under 40 minutes from when she got bit, which I thought was pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah. And when we got back to the truck, like I was trying to hold her sort of behind me, just kind of like comforting her, like, petting her on the leg or whatever. And when I went to put her in the truck, I had blood on my arm. And so I was like, she's been bit. Like, we got to go. And then, so I'm sitting in the back seat with her. And then that's when I saw like the hole and the bleeding and I mean, it was already pretty bruised. And at that point,
Was it swelling? Like what?
Yeah, not at that point. And it's hard because her fur is so, she had a lot of fur right there on her chest or whatever.
Right.
And, but by then she had some, what looked like pretty severe bruising. And when we got to the vet, they were like, oh, she's already got some necrosis. And so it was like black on the front of her chest.
That fast.
And it was well contained right around the bite area.
Which was like the front of her chest and her right shoulder is where she got bit.
Okay.
Yep. And so as he's driving down all of these dirt roads and stuff, she's getting pretty lethargic by this point. She's trying to go to sleep. She's whining. She won't let me touch it. She's kind of gnawing at me if I'm, playing with her paw or something. And so I wasn't sure if she was going to make it. Like, we didn't, for all the things that we prepared for, I was most worried about porcupines, because that's what you see on Instagram and social media and stuff like that. So I was I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if she was going to make it to the vet. I didn't know, what is the timeline to know if this is going to be something that, she's not going to make it, or, but now I think I know a little bit more about it. And, so when
I was about to say, y'all got to the vet within 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty fast, especially considering you're out in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota hunting.
Yeah.
40 minutes, that's pretty fast. So you would think that, like, all right, we did everything we could. Like the dog is now in the hands of the professionals. They're in the area that they should be familiar with snake bites for sure.
Yep.
Talk to me about, like, was there a moment of where, like, your emotions or maybe the adrenaline finally dumped? Like, was there some sort of relief when you first initially got to the vet?
Um, no, not initially. I think the adrenaline dump happened like 5
On the
days
way
later.
there. Oh, okay.
I was pretty amped up. But when we got there, I think quite honestly, my medical background kind of kicked right in. I mean, it was interesting to see their reaction to my information. I was like, she got bit 47 minutes and 32 seconds ago. She has had no food or water since then. The snake was yellow. I had no idea. I was like, we heard the rattle and it's over here. She's been very lethargic. And I was like, I probably had her blood pressure or something too,
I was about to say, here are vitals.
Exactly. And they were like, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And when the vet walked in, he was like, "Oh yeah, she's already got some necrosis," and at that point he was like, "Well, if she was gonna be dead, she'd already be dead." And I was like, "Oh, or if it was gonna kill her, she'd already be dead." And I was like, "Okay, that."
So was that just like a bad time joke that didn't land, or was that like his official, like, she's gonna be fine, like, prognosis?
I think that was his like he's like, if it would have killed him, if it's gonna kill a dog, it'll do it within 30 minutes.
Yep,
So the
Okay.
fact that she's made it this far, she'll be fine.
she'll be fine.
Okay. And it's like my first instinct is I want to push back on that, but then it's like you're the doctor in the area that snake bites are fairly, they happen. I'm not going to say this is an everyday occurrence, but it happens. It's not foreign to them. So like
Yep.
it's hard to push back on that because it's like you see this, but at the same time, it's just like you kind of almost want to call BS right then.
And
Yeah.
it's not like he was a young guy first day on the job. Like, guy's been around for a long time. We asked him, he's like, "Yep, I see, several of these a year." He's speaking from experience. So it's
Yep.
like there was a reassuring part of that.
He said it with confidence.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
so it's just like you're the authority on the matter, so like I'm gonna adhere to this. So when did we start getting concerns again to where it's just like right now you get that prognosis, it's like there's got to be a sense of relief, like, oh, okay, well, the expert says she's going to come through this,
Yep.
but we know now that wasn't the case. So like when did you start noticing this isn't getting any better?
Yeah.
Well,
You want to talk about the website or
yeah.
Facebook?
So just happenstance. Like 2 weeks before we went on our trip, we were at a NAVDA training day, and we were talking to someone, and they mentioned, "Hey, there's this National Snakebite Facebook
Hotline.
group." Well, it's a Facebook group.
Yeah.
Hotline, same thing. It's poison control or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's a Facebook group instead of a phone number. Oh, interesting. So I joined the group or whatever. So I think while we were walking back to the truck, I made a post in that group saying, "Hey, this is what's going on." But being a Facebook group, you don't get the instant, like, I mean, it's very good. Like, definitely everyone should be a member of it, but it's not like calling poison control where someone answers you within 10 seconds. Like, so by the time someone responded, and when they respond, they're going to give you like, "Hey, here's the protocol," which you can find on their Facebook group in the file section or on their website too. Here's the protocol that we recommend for treatment of this stuff and all that. But they respond and they give you all that. And then if you have questions about like, "Hey, these are the symptoms we're seeing," or "This happened," or whatever, they respond to all that stuff too. But we get back to our campsite, and now we're like thinking about, "Hey, we need to pack our stuff up because we still have to move tonight because she's flying home tomorrow." And they responded. I'm looking at him like, "Okay, well, the vet, what he did was give her a steroid injection and give her an NSAID pain medication and an antibiotic." And so they respond with the protocol and they say, "Don't give them a steroid. It's bad. Don't use NSAIDs. Definitely don't use NSAIDs and steroids in combination."
I was about to say, what's the point of giving them a steroid, but then giving them a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory?
Yeah. So
That's weird.
pain control is their idea with the NSAID. Um,
And the steroids just so that they don't get a lot of swelling or kind
mhm.
of, it just helps their body cope with the trauma.
That's the idea. It doesn't actually work for snake bite,
Hmm.
turns out. Um, and then they also say don't give antibiotics unless you actually have reason to believe that there's an infection, not just a
Right.
envenomation. And there's great reasoning behind it. We could talk about it if you want, but so I'm looking at this, going, "Oh man." They
What have
say
we
don't.
done?
They say don't do all the things that we just did,
Yep.
and he is quite confident in, yep, I do this all the time, and your dog's gonna be fine. Um, and I'm texting you at this point. I'm texting a couple of friends, and they're like, "Well, did you get the antivenom?" Like, well, no, and they didn't even offer it. And turns out they don't have it. And
So the emergency vet in the middle of snake country in hunting season,
yeah,
they don't
Yep.
have anti-venom.
yep.
No.
Yeah, okay.
What we need to move back to Sioux Falls because we need to be there. And
And it's about a 3-hour drive.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we start moving that direction. And
About an hour in.
yeah, about an hour in, we're like, she doesn't seem to be getting better. Maybe even seems to be getting worse. Like swelling is getting
Swelling is
worse.
now an issue.
Hmm.
Yep. Swelling is becoming much, much worse.
So we call the animal hospital in Sioux Falls, and they tell us they don't have antivenom either. And so then there's another hospital in Rapid City, which is on the other end of South Dakota, the west end, the west side of South Dakota, right in the Black Hills, and they have antivenom. But of course now that puts us in the wrong direction to get to the airport that she needs to be at, and it's also like now, you know,
5 hours away.
yeah, and counting. Um, so we ask like, okay, well, under what circumstances would you guys administer the antivenom? And they said, well, we'd take a blood test and we look at this, this, and if these things were happening, then we would give the antivenom. Okay, so we're going to keep on with our plan. We're going to go to Sioux Falls. We're going to go to the animal hospital there. We're going to get blood work done, and we'll see what it says, and then we'll go from there. So we get to the hospital there, and well, of course we had to go drop off the camper, all that stuff. So we're like,
Yeah.
it was a crazy day.
Yeah. And by this point, it's almost 9 o'clock at night. And she won't put weight on her leg at all. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want you to pick her up. She
Yeah,
just
because her
wants
chest
to.
is swollen too. So
Yeah.
like you can't like there's
Yeah.
And it's going down into her paw now. So like her leg, you can kind of see that it's moving down. And it takes them a while. Like, I mean, they told us, they were busy. There was an emergency surgery. So I don't think we actually got fully checked in to almost 2 o'clock in the morning.
mhm.
And so at this point, it's like, okay, if you do blood work, we're not driving to Rapid City now because, it's been a long day.
I haven't eaten since breakfast. I've been awake for 24 hours. Like, yeah,
Yep.
it's
Yep. So they decide they just admit her, and they were like, we'll keep her here. We'll put her on some pain meds. We'll keep her keep her comfortable, and give her some fluids. We'll do all this blood work. And if there's anything concerning, the vet changeover or whatever happens at 7, we'll call you around 7. And so we left her there.
So this is now the second time that you should, dealing with professional veterinary services within snake country, you have to trust kind of that they know what they're talking about. This is the second time you should feel
Yep.
some sort of relief.
mhm.
Yep.
How long did that last?
Not long. I mean, because the next part is probably the hardest part of this whole story. Is because it was a little after 8. I'm packing up to go to the airport because we're gonna go pick up Puna, and I forget what time my flight was.
It was like 2 in the afternoon, but
Yeah,
we were
eh,
originally planning on either doing some more duck hunting Saturday morning or maybe even that Saturday was the pheasant opener in Minnesota. So we thought
Mm.
maybe go over to Minnesota and do some pheasant hunting that morning. But
yeah, and we get a call a little after 8, and so she's only been there for like 6 hours, and at this point, under fluids or whatever. And the vet says, it's she's not doing good. And I am afraid that with the amount of swelling that she has, I don't think she's going to make it. And I mean, it just, when you hear that about your dog and you start second guessing every decision you've made in this moment. Should we have pushed to get the Antivenom somewhere else? Should we have gone to Rapid City? Should we have taken her out of, the Sioux Falls and taken her somewhere else when we weren't getting treatment? I think we probably called 15 more vets trying to find antivenom, because then we asked on the phone, we were like, okay, if we go get the antivenom, do you think that it turns it around? And she was like, it's been too long. I don't think the antivenom will do anything at this point. And
yeah, so the vet that she was talking to on the phone said it's been more than 6 hours or more than 4 hours.
4 hours.
So at this point, there's nothing you can do, and she's probably not going to make it.
So she's essentially telling y'all, like, just give up. I mean, not in those just 2 words, but essentially,
that was
end
kind
result. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And meanwhile, I mean, I hear her on the phone, so I immediately start calling different vets. And I think I started with, because now, based on being in Sioux Falls, like, we're not that far away from some major cities. So I think I called the University of Minnesota Vet Hospital, or the vet school. It's like, well, a vet school, right? Like,
Yeah.
From the University of Minnesota is one of the biggest universities in the country. Like, they must have antivenom, right?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
No.
And I asked, well, do you know who does? So they gave me a couple of numbers, and those numbers, they didn't have it either.
Yeah. And I was calling, anything that was within a 500-mile radius of us, trying to find it. And I mean, I think the last call that I could handle, someone was like, well, have you called poison control? I was like, for a snake bite? Like, I'm just curious if you have antivenom. And she was like, well, we need a full evaluation to determine if it's necessary. So I would suggest calling poison control. And I was like,
you're not hearing the words that
yeah,
are coming
we're
out
not
of my
coming
mouth
to
right
you.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'm also simultaneously texting some friends, and our friend Dylan, shout out Dylan, says, hey, why don't you try this place? And so I call this vet, and I get the receptionist, and she says, yep, we have antivenom, no problem. I explain we're going to go get Puna. We're going to pull her out of the hospital. We're going to drive 2.5 hours to this place. And now it's Saturday, right? So they're like, well, we close at noon. I'm like, but you guys have like emergency service? She's like, yep, we got a vet and call. He'll be here waiting for you. Just, give us an update of when what your ETA is. I'm like, okay, great. When he calls back, the actual vet calls back maybe 15 minutes later and says, hey, I understand that you have a dog that's been bitten by a snake and you're pulling it out of the animal hospital in Sioux Falls, and you're going to bring it to me. I was like, yep, that's right. You have Antivenom, right? He's like, yes, I do. He's like, but you realize that the place you're at right now is like the premier care facility in like the tri-state area, right? I'm like, but they don't have Antivenom. He's like, well, I'm a cow doctor. Like, I'm gonna come open the door for you. I'm gonna be in like overalls. I'm like, you have Antivenom, right? And he's like, yes. I'm like, then I don't care. I'm coming.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this is all happening within like 15 minutes. So we're still in the camper, because I'm at this point, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to bring my bag. I need to be on a plane. Maybe. And so on the way so go back to the Facebook group, by this point, they are very much in tune to our situation. Like, we have posted, like, this is what the vet said, what do we think about antivenom, 24 hours later, and so they're doing really good of keeping up, talking to us, trying to give us some tips and what to do. And one of the things that they suggested was, before you take Puna out of the vet, have them run these specific tests. And that was probably one of the best things that we did, or decisions we made, was to call back and say, we want these specific tests because these are going to be the markers of improvement for her. And what was interesting is that when we got those, we went and got Puna. The results weren't in yet, so they emailed them to us as we were driving to the next vet. And when we posted those to the Facebook group, they were like, she actually looks like she's doing good. It might have been a dry bite. Because I forget which of the blood tests, like, the coagulation or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think her coagulation numbers were decent. So
Yeah.
So this is crazy to me because it's just like it's all over the place to where you've gone through 2 vets, you've had all this advice, you've called round number 20-ish vets
Yeah.
Yeah.
all over the place in numerous states. And now with the test results, now there's people telling you that it might even be a potential dry bite.
hmm
Meanwhile, the premier care facility in the state is advising essentially like, say goodbye.
Yep.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So
Yep.
where do we go from here?
Yeah, and so we told them what we were gonna do. We told when we picked her up, and so they were nice enough, and they left the IV in so that Puna didn't have to go through that again. So or the at least the start of it. And then yeah, we put her in the truck and we drove 4 hours, 3 hours to the
Yeah.
next vet.
Yeah.
And it was just like he said. He was right there, had the door open. He was in his coveralls. One of his staff members stayed with him just long enough so that we could get in, get her settled.
I think this was the first moment I really started to feel good. I mean, not that I had a bad. We can come back and recap some of my
The
thoughts about
emotional roller
Yeah.
coaster.
and some of my thoughts on the experience we had with the vets and stuff. But like, this was the kind of place where like we're in there. He was extremely calming, very like confident in what he was doing, and at the same time, we got there at like 12:30. They closed at noon. Some rancher comes in because the door's open because he let us in, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for some needles to I got to give my cow some shots or whatever." And the vet is like, "Yep, they're over here." And the guy's like, "Okay, well, I need to pay for him." He's like, "Don't worry about it. I got you. Just come back on Monday. We'll pay for it." It's like suddenly it's like, oh, I'm in like a small town vet. I feel like whatever that
Like you're an actual priority.
right.
Mhm.
Like say what you want about like the small town vet, but like I felt like comforted in that like, oh, he's like taking care of us, and he knows what he's doing, and he's like, yeah, we're important. So like what he's got going on now. He turns out he was in the Marines, and then he was in the Army National Guard, and so we were talking for a while, and because it took like 2 hours to administer the antivenom. Not that he was.
Yeah.
It was just like
It takes that
like
long.
it's
to
like an IV
administer.
drip, so it just takes
Yep. Took a long time, and it was, he was trying to keep it frozen until we got there. So they called twice while we were on our way, trying to figure out like how far out were we so that we could then, they could start defrosting it by the time, or before we got there and stuff. Because by this time, Puna's whole leg was really, really swollen. Her chest was swollen, and all around her neck was quite swollen as well. So, she had quite a bit of swelling, very uncomfortable. But I will say, when we picked her up from the vet in Sioux Falls, and knowing that they didn't think she was going to make it, she whimpered one time
and she walked.
As she was walking out of the clinic. She whimpered one time, and from then on, not a single whimper. Like, I mean, it was like the turning point for her. Like she started improving, which was just crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, he was really worried about the swelling. He kept checking it and stuff, but as he was, administering all of the antivenom, he was taking her temperature like every 5 minutes, making sure she wasn't having an allergic reaction to it. He had IVs set up so that if something was to go wrong, he could quickly start pumping her system. Yeah, I mean, she sat there and tolerated it very well. And then, he let her go outside and go to the bathroom, and then he brought her back in and gave her a bag of IV just to help her out because she hadn't eaten, hadn't drank much water. She'd been on some fluids the day before, when we had her in the ER or the emergency vet in Sioux Falls. But yeah, so I mean, it was a fantastic experience, and and then he started educating us, which I appreciate. Like I need information to calm my fears. The more information I have, so I wanted it straight. Like what are the things we're looking at? Like, is she going to lose her skin? Is she going to lose a leg, or is she going to die in 2 days or something like that? And and he was very matter of fact. And, you can't rule anything out. But in my experience, I think she's going to be fine. And that was what, 4 hours after we had just been told she was going to die, and it's just, it was, I think that was the point where I finally started to believe that she was going to be okay. I knew we probably weren't out of the woods. I wanted to get her home. I wanted to make her comfortable. I wanted to put her in surroundings that were familiar, that she could relax and start to recover. But I think that was the first moment where I was like, we might be okay in this.
Mm.
Yeah. So then on the drive, I told Sam, like, there's no way you're flying home today. Like, that's just not, that's
Yeah.
not, I mean, aside from the logistics of this, like, I'm
Yeah.
not letting you leave your dog here. And
I was about to say the emotional roller coaster and the toll
yeah.
that takes. Because I mean, I know. Continue on with the story, because y'all essentially wrapped up from there, and you just decided, because y'all had the 6 week dream trip planned essentially, and obviously after this it was just y'all were just so taxed, y'all just decided to call it what it was and come on home and get Puna back, because it took her a few days for her to rebound completely, right?
Yeah. By the time we got, so Sam flew, well, so Saturday night, then we went back to our campsite in Sioux Falls. And I think that was the adrenaline dump.
Oh,
We
crashed.
Well, yeah, we built a little bonfire and just sat there with the dogs. And like, that was
It was really emotional because
Yeah.
she was still very lethargic, didn't want to put weight on her leg, didn't want to eat. We tried to give her some food and she, it didn't stay down. And so you had hope, but you just didn't know. And so, yeah, I think it was a really emotional night for everybody. And, and then we got up the next morning. So now it's Sunday, and I had the last flight out of Sioux Falls on Sunday because I needed to be back Monday morning. And so I think my flight was at like 10 o'clock at night or something like that. So I took her out, and we walked around, and she started putting a little bit of weight on her leg. You could kind of tell that some of the swelling was going down in her leg. I think that was the one thing that I was most concerned about, is that this whole leg is super tight with fluid, and so I was doing.
like, if it swells anymore, it's going to burst.
Yeah, yeah. And so, that started to go down. And by this point, also, by the time we got to Sioux Falls, actually, so the night of the bite, she had, that initial pocket of black that was on her chest had moved all the way across her chest, all the way to the other armpit, and all the way down into her belly. Like, it was just massive bruising everywhere. And that would continue to get worse for several days. Like, she had quite a bit of bruising, which was the most outward sign that.
Now, were these other doctors? The first one called it necrosis, which is dead flesh or dead skin.
Yep.
Were the other doctors still referring to it as necrosis? Because that's completely different than bruising.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think at the hospital, I don't think they'd like addressed it.
Mm-mm.
And I think that the guy that administered the Antivenom, I think he said it was bruising. He said there may be a little bit of superficial necrosis, but it doesn't look like she would lose any major tissue.
Yep.
So even going back to that for the first doctor, it's just like, how many people that are supposed to provide the relief and provide the professional services that we count on when we go out there and take these risks with our dogs, how many of those people like failed every step of the way? And it's like, if kudos to you two for having the refusal to quit and advocate for the dog, because we hear all the time how important it is for us to advocate for our dogs. They can't speak English, blah, blah, blah. But it's hard when you're standing face to face with the guy wearing the white coat that went to school, that carries the experience, saying it with confidence. Like, that's my thing, is you're saying it to me with confidence implies that you understand the severity of what's going on. And you're still just nonchalantly throwing this at me. Hindsight, we know it's false. Like, that would eat away at me, because just trust in the system as a whole. It's just like all of these people are supposed to help, and they did the exact opposite. And if y'all didn't actually have the will, we would have never even really found out that they were wrong. It's just by listening to them that could have been the result. But I can't even put into words like I'm how pissed off I am on behalf of y'all.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was I mean, by the time like we're sitting around our little bonfire on Saturday night, like I mean, I want to like burn it all down, like the whole world.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, and to put it into perspective, I mean, it was 24 hours to get from the snake bite to the third vet with the antivenom. So 24 hours, 3 vets, about 1,000 miles I drove. I mean, it was like it was it was a lot. I mean, like I'm not I'm not sure that most people would go through that effort. Just
No.
I mean, and I'm not saying that like to pat myself on the back, but I think it's important for people to recognize like kind of what they're up against in this scenario. Like especially like I mean, I thought I was prepared. I thought I did my part, you know. Um, and to go back and answer your question, then, so she flew out Sunday. Monday morning, I drive home, and I just power through. So I get home late Monday night, and then Tuesday we
Yeah,
bring.
we had called our vet here on Monday, and we have a local vet that we use for all of our animals. And I was like, I want to talk to you specifically. Here's the situation. Here's all of her blood work. I brought all of her paperwork in. I was like, she's not home yet, but this is what's happening. And she was like, you don't need an appointment if you want to park the trailer in the back or the camper in the back. You just whatever time you get here, you just pull on through because they know us, they know our dogs, they know what they mean to us, and yeah, and they got us in first thing Tuesday morning, and again, thank goodness we got the blood work. We called, and because the vet in Sioux Falls didn't do the test specifically that on the snakebite website they were encouraging us to get, like the coagulation times, and there was a couple that were on there.
Red blood cell count, coagulation time, and there are a couple other ones that I don't know what they.
Yep.
So the premier care facility in the state didn't even know which tests are on
Which
that.
test? Yeah. So we requested those by name, and then that way, on Tuesday, our vet was like, absolutely, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we were able to see that even though it was still abnormal, she was getting better
Yeah,
by
really,
then.
for the most part, everything, liver enzymes and all this stuff had returned to normal with the exception of red blood cell count. So
She was
which obviously
anemic.
like that takes time, right?
Yeah.
You have to regenerate that. But ironically, our vet here in Tennessee was super up to speed on like how to treat rattlesnake bites, which is I found like just mind blowing. Like, and she even told us, she's like, we don't have the antivenom, but you can go 30 minutes down the road and they do have it. So like she even knew where to go get it, and so
Well, and I mean, I know not all vets carry Antivenom because it is expensive, and there's a shelf life. There's you have to be smart about it to where not every vet is going to carry this because statistically speaking, what are the odds?
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that many vets in South Dakota that time of year when it's unseasonably warm, there's no anti-venom to be had. And lo and behold, you have to leave all of the fancy, expensive, probably renowned veterinary doctors in these nice, fancy care facilities. And the podunk cow doctor in the middle of South Dakota has what you need and actually has the bed service, if you will, to treat y'all as an actual priority. And I think I asked you, like, I got to know, did you call those original facilities back? Did you let them know how bad they failed you?
Not yet. It's still like on my to-do list, but I'm just so like, I don't know. I still don't know if I'm in the right mindset for it to be a productive conversation other than just like expletives.
Yell at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in their defense, like we knew they did not in Sioux Falls, they told, because we called and we were like, what would you do in this situation? And they were like, we don't have the antivenom. So we knew what we were getting into.
Sort of. I still expected they had the
Oh,
expertise.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly. So like we knew that they didn't have the antivenom. So, but you are correct. It was just like the expertise to look at the situation and say, no, she will be okay. This swelling might be worse, because that's what the doctor that actually administered the antivenom said. She probably would have been okay without it. It just, she might have had more necrosis, or she might have had more bruising or swelling, or it might have taken longer for her to recover. The anemia would have taken longer to resolve. But nowhere in there did he say she's not going to make it. Like there
Right.
was no scenario on the table in which she was not going to make it.
To circle back on your point about how not everybody will go through the extent that you guys did after all of the advice being given to you by the quote unquote experts. I'm in that group. I mean, you're kind of keeping me loosely. Like, I'm not bugging y'all wanting, I know y'all are busy. I'm not asking for updates all the time, but you're shooting me texts. You're kind of keeping me in the fold. And from afar, based off of what you're telling me, what the doctors are saying, again, I'm assuming a doctor is an actual doctor in this scenario. Clearly they weren't, but I'm in the shoes, especially after it starts coming up, the discussion about it being a dry bite, to where my natural instinct, and from everything that I've gathered from all these vets, I mean, I've done episodes on snake bites. I've done some research on it and blah blah blah. Like, majority of the time, the dogs do end up fine. It's like they are very, very tough animals, and they bounce back. But then when it's like just the constant, oh, it's going to be fine. Oh, no, it's bad. Oh, it's necrosis. Nope, we got to do this. It's just like, what in the world?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to come across as like totally bashing the vets, because I've done a lot. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert, but I feel way more up to speed on like that whole thing now than I did before. Um, I think that you, in the grand scheme of things, in what a vet is going to like see in their practice, like snake bite is pretty low on the list. So, you know, while in the moment, it's certainly like, this is the most important thing in the world to me right now. How can you possibly not know about this? Uh, you know, it's for them to expend their resources on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily make sense. And the other thing too is that, like Sam did some research, because I mean that's what she does, medical research, and it turns out that like most dogs will survive a prairie rattlesnake bite without antivenom.
Right.
And I think that, and so like with that first vet we went to, when he said she's going to be fine, I do believe that he was being honest. And it wasn't like he was like, oh, I've never seen this before, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, I mean, I think he was genuine. But I think that, when we think about like, what does success look like? I think that probably, like, at least speaking for me and Sam, like, success for our dog getting through this event means that the dog this is the same as before the event occurred. But for most people, it's probably, well, the dog didn't die. Like, oh yeah, it's got a limp now for the rest of its life, or like it can't run, but it's alive. Spot's still around. So the farm dog that came in, it's like, yep, it's still there, sleeping on the front porch. Like, so yeah, the dog's fine. But like, well, no, I want to go hunt. I want to go like do the things that we got this dog to do. So my success is different than your success. So, necrosis, losing all her muscle tissue in her leg, that's not acceptable. So I think there's that too. So then you look at like you already mentioned, the cost and the shelf life and all this stuff of having antivenom on hand versus, okay, well, is, Farmer Bob going to pay $800 for this antivenom to get to his dog that is just going to sleep on the porch, and he's okay with that? Like, well, he's probably not. And we had that conversation with the vet that actually did get the antivenom. He's like, a lot of people are just like, no, I don't want it. I don't want to pay for it. So, I don't want to come across as like, just bashing all the vets. But So then I think what I hope that everyone listens to this conversation gets out of it is that you have to be the advocate for your dog, and you need to like know what right is and where you're willing to like compromise on the right answer. And so like I think the National Snakebite support group does an excellent job of saying like, hey, this, if everything's perfect, this is what you should do to treat this dog. And humans, they also have like,
Yeah.
this is what you do, treat a human too. And then you need to like know what that is so that when you're being told differently, you can say like, I'm willing to accept that, or no, that's not right. Like we either need to go somewhere else or you need to do the right thing. Starting it with at least, hey, you need to like take these labs so we know what's
Mm-hmm.
really going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, like, I mean, well, how can you possibly make a decision? But, and then the other thing, the other big takeaway for me is like, okay, I did all the things that everybody says you should do. I had my first aid kit. I knew where the emergency vet was. Like, what I didn't do is call the emergency vet and say, like, hey, do you have antivenom? Like, because I'm confident that, like, if you get on the internet and you say, hey, this is where I'm hunting, where's the nearest emergency vet? That vet is going to be able to handle trauma, and they're going to be able to handle, like,
99% of.
yep, poisoning and that kind of stuff, right? 99% of the things that you're going to have an issue with, what they may or may not be prepared to deal with is a snake bite.
Yeah.
From the person, even if they have the expertise, if they don't have the antivenom, that is, and again, I'm not the expert. You can go look at the stuff that the National Snake Bite Support like puts out, but like the only thing to stop tissue damage from the envenomation is the antivenom. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
And I think we have to reiterate that because somebody listening to this, going back to your reference earlier about the person advising you to call, poison control.
Yep.
Poison and venom are not the same thing. Poison is ingested, venom is injected, and it's in the blood. And so that's why so many of these things that you would think that you're prepared for, that you know about, it is completely different, because a lot of people, you hear all the time, it comes up every single year. Your dog got bit by a venomous snake, take Benadryl, you're good. That is an antihistamine. All that does is address the allergic symptoms to the venom, if there are any.
And there probably aren't.
And there probably aren't for most dogs. And then even if you have the snake vaccine, that is only good for certain snakes, which I believe is the Western Diamondback. There is anecdotal statistics and analytics saying that it has some effect on other snake bites, but again, it's to what degree we don't know. And then there's also,
and for the record, because everyone asked me this when we told the story, the National Snakebite Support Group and the whatever the professional association of vets are, like I forget what their name is, they do not recommend the snakebite vaccine.
That's where I was going, because I've covered that on here before too, to where they are now having dogs having more aversive reactions to the vaccine than they are the actual venom. It's statistically more likely your dog has an allergic reaction to the vaccine than the benefits that the vaccine provides. Again, it seems like every year there's a new study or vets are saying something different, so you have to make your own choice and decision. But I went from years ago giving the snake vaccine to now I don't give the snake vaccine. And I find it interesting, the people that are always advocating for it, they're like, well, the vet says if I didn't have that, then my dog would have died. I'm like, your vet has no idea if that's true or not.
Yeah, the evidence isn't very strong, but at the same time, I totally like, as an emotional argument, like, oh man, that's a tough decision to make. But the evidence and the research says that there's more risk, like you said, there's more risk in giving the vaccine than there is in actually getting the bite.
It is not like, well, if it helps 10%, it's better than nothing. It's just like, well, it depends on who you ask. This is a discussion that you should have with your vet, not based on a podcast. All I'm doing is repeating the information that I've come across throughout the years. But, it's one of those, you raise some good points about not only the cost and the shelf life of the antivenom, but the demographics around the area, to where there's a difference between probability and possibility. Is it possible your dog gets struck by a snake? Yes. Is it likely? No. I mean, I've been going out west for years. I saw more snakes this year than I ever have. And knock on wood, we've been able to avoid that, but it is not it is not a very common thing. And then when you're in an area such as South Dakota, it's not the majority of the state is not the most lucrative population out there. So being able to afford it, so that does help. But I go back to, I struggle with just almost the sheer level of incompetence across across society nowadays. So like maybe I'm not the most positive person for a discussion such as this, but I go back to how many people in that process failed y'all. Right? Like, to me, I understand from the first doctor, and it's just like it sounds like, he may have been correct to begin with, but how he delivered it, how he went about it, and then every other person since then not listening to y'all about poison control versus like, oh, well, we have to do our own workup to believe whether the premier care facility in the state actually did their workup, which, come to find out, maybe this is why they asked for the workup, because they knew what kind of facility y'all were at.
Right.
So like, I get it. And I don't want to just chastise the entire industry for a few select people, but like, y'all called every facility in the state, and it took Farmer John to be able to help y'all. In 2025, with all of these really corporate veterinary services out there, they got to do better than this, because I mean, all I hear are bad experiences with vets everywhere. Like, every now and then you get a good example of an experience with somebody. And I have some buddies that are good vets and that they help out. My buddy Jay has an online service, and you can call and have access to a quality vet. But it's frustrating when you look around and how many vets are out there, and to get any reliable information that you don't have to second guess and triple guess. And it's just like, the doctor leaves the room and you're immediately pulling up Google, and then the doctors are going to complain, you don't trust me. And it's like, yeah, here's why, because you got it wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And some people are afraid to do that, especially in the face of authority. But to your point, like, if your gut is screaming at you, this isn't right, listen to your gut, because the alternative, what's the worst case scenario? You go through the effort and the dog unfortunately passes. You at least know you did everything you could. On the contrary, if you just take them at their word and the worst happens, you're going to be wondering like, man, should I have made the Facebook post on that snake bite?
Yeah.
It's just like those little things to where it's really not that big of a deal when you're removed from it. But in the middle of it, it's just like, if a vet tells you one thing, you kind of want to take their word for it. It's like, I can see how this is
It's hard.
it pulls you two different directions.
Yeah. And then, when you're traveling, when you're not at home too, it's even worse, right? Because it's like, so now what do I do that I've decided I'm not comfortable with what that vet says? Do I go back to him and say, hey,
Right.
let's try this again? Or do I like, okay, well, now I need to find a new vet. Like, but I'm not home. Like, it's not like, if I don't like my vet here at home, I'm like, well, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to find a new one. Like, it's like, no, I need it right now. And I don't know any of these people, so yeah, it's tough. And so that's, like I said, I think one of the big takeaways is like knowing what the right answer is. Like, so if you either go to, and I think that I'll put together a blog post and put it in the newsletter, with these resources too. But like, if you go to the National Snakebite support, they have either their Facebook group or their website they have files, and you can print out the protocol. I laminated it and it went in my first aid kit now. So that way, like, I can pull it out and be like, hey, this is what I think we should be doing. And, and if the vet argues with you, I mean, well, one, it's like, okay, well, I'm going somewhere else, but at least like, hey, this is the standard.
Protocol.
Yeah. This is the standard. And, yeah. And so know what right looks like. Call the places ahead of time, figure out what they're actually capable of dealing with, and ask specific questions. Cause like, I did call on the way there, not that it would like have made that much of a difference in the crunch time, but like, I did call them and say, hey, I have a snake bite. Can you deal with this? And they said, yeah, no problem. We got it. But I didn't ask, do you have antivenom? I said, can you deal with the snake bite? Which,
but
that's silly me.
Stuff like that. sends me over the edge because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I know technically I didn't ask if you have anti-venom,
Mhm.
but deductive reasoning, just oh, your dog was snake bite. They might want to know I don't have anti-venom, like
Right.
the
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it's just like if you call them, they'll say that, well, you didn't ask.
Right.
My, you
Yeah.
know how to you automatically start breathing oxygen in the morning. Don't to me that's idiotic, but that's the world we live in right
Right.
there. They're like, well, yeah, we handle snake bites, but you didn't ask if we have anti-venom. That's the stuff that sends me over the edge.
Right.
It's just like, come on, people, like
Yeah. Yeah.
this isn't that hard.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
So Sam, after this whole ordeal, last year you've been coming down, you're taking Puna down there. I mean, I was kind of down there on some pivotal, like, breakthroughs and
Yep.
excitement to the hunting season. Y'all's big dream trip got cut short.
Yep.
Remorse? Do you have any, like, are you outlook moving forward? Are you
Mhm.
are you a little more hesitant to get real worked up and excited to start planning this year's trip? Are you changing anything? Just kind of talk to me about when you think back on it now, a couple months removed,
Mhm.
because we couldn't even record this recently afterwards. Like, we needed to let it breathe for you guys for a little bit.
Yeah.
So where are you at now with it all?
Yeah, I mean it's still like it's still very emotional for me. Like it's and I like talking about it. I think there's a lot of good lessons learned from it, but it is incredibly emotional to know like what we were facing, what we were hearing, and where we are now. So now she does have some fur that's still trying to grow back, but she had no tissue death. She's got a little bit of some range of motion issues, but she's working through that. So when she's out playing in the yard, you can't even see it. Now Mama's heart, on the other hand, has got some scars. And one of the things we were worried about was because she got bit while she was on point, would that make her hesitant
And she
to?
was so young.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 10 months old, on point, and she just gets ambushed because I mean she's pointing the snake, like she's doing what I don't know what that is. It's moving. I'm gonna point it, and never moved. So we were a little worried of what that would look like, and of course it's it was fall back in Tennessee, and there's butterflies and bees in our rose bushes out front, and she's pointing, butterflies, within a couple of days. So we're like, okay, maybe she'll still point, but it took me a long time. One of the things that the last vet had mentioned to us was that sometimes the allergic reaction to the antivenom happens if you give them too close together. So like he was telling us of a case where someone had gotten antivenom and then 6 months or 6 weeks later had gotten bit again, and they gave him the antivenom and had a reaction to it. And so I think that was the hardest thing for me, was letting her go back out in the woods, not knowing what happens if she gets bit again. Are the treatment options still available for her? And I think that was one of the hard things for me. I don't remember, we might have been down at your place, and I was like, is it too warm outside? I was like, we've had a freeze, right? And because it was something that was just difficult. And I think, the community of dogs that we've kind of put ourselves in, I think has been really amazing to hear other experiences, to hear people who have been hunting for 20 years and they were like, I didn't know this, and now they're trying to prepare differently. But I think it's also the community that tells you this is what your dog was born to do. This is why you got your dog, was to watch them do what they were born to do, and it is be in that field tracking birds, pointing, bringing them to hand, all of those things that just are these amazing moments you get to share with your dog. You can't be selfish and take that from them. This is why we have them. And so it is still very uneasy to go out in the woods. We were just out there a couple days ago, just walking in the woods somewhere nearby, and I was like, he's like, do you want to put her skid plate on, and I was like, it's just going to be a quick walk. And I was like, nope, because she's going to come up on a stick and I'm going to have said no. And so, I think we're much more prepared, or well, we're always prepared. It's never just a walk. It's always like this is what we're going to do. We're preparing, but at the same time, you just have to take a step back and say, you know what? If this is how she goes, or if that is how she went, she was doing exactly what she was born to do. And you just have to find a way to make peace with that. And it's still a work in progress, but she'll be back out there next year. We're really looking forward to it. She did some duck hunting here in Tennessee since then. Maybe it was more of like sitting in the cold waiting for ducks to come in.
So Tennessee duck hunting.
Tennessee duck hunting. But she's still as energetic as ever, wants to be out there, doesn't want to be left behind. So I couldn't have asked for a better recovery from her perspective.
We took her quail hunting too, and she was.
Oh yeah, we took her quail hunting down in Florida as well, which was that was the first thing I asked the guy that on the property we went on. I was like, "Do you have snakes?" And he was like, "They're probably long gone now." I was like, "Okay."
So you got back to your vet that you trust. Is there any concern over lingering issues, arthritis potentially? Like, I don't know if there's anything, especially at that young of an age, they're almost superheroes. It's like you could chop off their head and it grows back by lunch.
Right.
But, is there anything that they warned you about that could potentially be, a side effect long term with this?
The only thing that we talked, so initially when we got back and talked to her, she said, like, obviously look out for any kind of tissue death. Then when we did a follow up, it didn't seem like there was going to be any. So yeah, like Sam said, she has some range of motion issues. Sometimes when she sits down, she'll kind of like pick that paw up. Kind of weird. Like,
yeah, it kind of like crosses her body. Like it's almost uncomfortable for her to bring it down and in front of her. So it just looks like she's picking it up because it just is a little uncomfortable.
But when she's moving, you can't tell. So
can't tell at all.
So I don't know. Maybe there'll be some long-term issues, but like nothing that's too obvious or.
And it certainly doesn't stop her. I mean, she's a little, she's definitely an adventure pup for sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we went through the whole story. What's something that we glossed over, forgot about, I didn't ask about? What's something we missed?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's it was tough. I mean, it's a incredibly emotional situation, and our dogs are our family. We don't have kids, and so these are our kids. This is our family. And so I think making sure what your resources are, and then just, I mean, I when we debriefed the whole thing, this is something that two people in a highly charged emotional situation are trying to go through. It would have been really easy for us to, we haven't slept in 36 hours. We haven't eaten in 48 hours. And it was just a really tough situation. And I think, the one thing that we did is we relied on each other. We talked the whole way through. We made decisions together, and I think that was something that I was really proud of us as just as a couple, in that stressful situation. And, I would imagine, I don't like comparing dogs to kids, but, being a parent in that situation, it's like you try to do what's best and you make those decisions together. And so, I think that we were really good support systems for each other in that moment. I wanted to fly home because I didn't want to like disappoint anybody, or my sister was supposed to actually be there and I had to tell my sister, like, you got to cancel your flight. I'm not coming home. And, and he was like, you need to be here, so I thought we did really well together in those moments. But, it was just, I think it didn't necessarily taint the whole experience. That bird that I talked about the morning of is just the highlight of that whole day. It was such an awesome moment for her. And, so I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
Well, I'm just glad that it could have obviously gone a number of different ways, all through the turmoil and the drama and headache and the lack of sleep, no eating and all that stuff. At least it turned out how knock on wood, we hoped all along. I appreciate y'all coming on and sharing the story, and hopefully, somebody listening to this will feel a little bit better prepared, at least if anything else, to just be able to be that voice and fight for the dog that they can't do it themselves. And just understand that we are the stewards for the dogs, and we have to fight for them when they can't. And just because somebody in a white coat tells you something it doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. So
Right.
Anything else?
I guess 2 quick things. One, so we mentioned that the vet said it had been more than 6 hours. The official advice from the real experts when it comes to this stuff says that if the symptoms are still persisting, give antivenom. So don't think that because you missed your 4-hour window or 6-hour window or whatever, that it's too late, you can't do anything. You can. And then the other thing too is um, we talked about carrying the dog out. So I'm sure most people have at least thought oh, this is how I would do it. Practice it. Yeah, try it. And not just oh, I put the dog in the vest. Okay, great. Put it on your back. Try to go through a barbed wire fence.
So that carabiner you're talking about, was that hooked on to because the Final Rise vest, they have that little
loop
clip inside the game pouch area, I guess. So that's what you clip the carabiner on and then connect that to the dog collar.
Yep. So I need to, before we go on our next trip, I'm gonna make it a little bit longer. It was a little too short, so the dog wasn't balanced in the vest. So that's a thing that I would I'd recommend people take a look at and look at. But yeah, because as good as it does, obviously it wasn't very comfortable for her. So she was wiggling around and wanted to get out. But you're trying to cross barbed wire fences and not leave your shotgun in the field and all that stuff, right? So you're trying to manage a lot of things. If you can make it easier for yourself, I would do it and then practice it. The first time your dog is experiencing that probably should not be when they're in a bad way.
Yeah, that's a good point from the dog's perspective too, because she was, she's unfamiliar, and for as much training as we do and as familiar as we try to make her surroundings and her, activities that we're asking her to do, it would have been really easy just to put her in the vest 1 or 2 times so that she knew what was happening. She understood the what it was going to feel like when I stood up or something like that, because she immediately starts wiggling, a back foot falls out. She's uncomfortable from the position, but also she's been bit. And, and so, and I mean, I think she actually did very well with that, even though she kind of gnawed at me a couple of times. She never got really physical with me, but, the more I jostled her around, the more she started fidgeting. But I mean, we wouldn't have gotten her out of the field as easily as we did if we didn't have the vest. So, I mean, by no means, we just needed to practice more with her so she was familiar with it.
We all need to practice everything, the mundane, medical stuff all the way through. I mean, it seems like I'm going through some porcupine stuff every single fall now, whether it's my dogs or other friends' dogs or something. And I mean, you honestly don't know. I mean, you can sit here and listen to the podcast, you can read it. You don't know how you're going to react to things until you're in that moment and you're staring at a dog who can't breathe because there's porcupine quills from, the all in their mouth, and it's just blocking the airways. Practice, because if you can practice and do it without the stress and the adrenaline and everything going, then you might stand a chance when that adrenaline is going and the dog is fighting you. So all that being said, last thing, do you remember the brand and size gloves in case somebody comes across it? He said that don't leave the shotgun. That reminded me. There's gloves out there.
There's gloves. What were those? The Final Rise, probably. Yeah. If they're small, I was gonna say if they're unisex, they're probably small. Yeah, they're sitting in the middle of a field. Yeah, watch out for the snake. They're right beside it.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, hopefully we don't have another story podcast such as this, but look forward to hearing some future trips and this fall. Y'all start planning that 6-week dream trip and knock it out this year.
That's right.
Absolutely.